Hey, this is Warren Redlick. This is going to be something different. We'll see how this works. I've set up a room on Clubhouse, and joining me will be Will Bradbury from Boring Revolution, who appears to be here now. K10,
Hello.
Kristen Netton. Please mute yourself. Um, and Juan Daniel, also known as DSG. Their Twitter handles are all in the description below. I'm just going through and so Will is already with me. Will, you want to say hello?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well.
Okay, so I'm going to turn hand raising off for now. So the way Clubhouse works, for the people in the audience, the idea here is we're going to have a four-person panel discussion about smart cities. It's going to be K10, Will Bradbury from the YouTube channel Boring Revolution, which I highly recommend, and Juan Daniel, who's on Twitter as DSG. The four of us are going to be talking about smart cities. It was a conversation on Clubhouse we had earlier. Everybody here? Will, just say something again.
Hello. Is that okay?
I don't know. We'll find out. For the people in the chat, please let us know if you can hear us. So we're going to talk about smart cities. It was a conversation on Clubhouse that I was in where Juan Daniel was talking about smart cities. And this is, by the way, being simultaneously streamed on YouTube. And with my face live and everybody else is sort of like the best images I could find for them on short notice because I wasn't careful ahead of time. Mostly their Twitter profiles. Will, I took something from our thumbnail, our previous thumbnail. Audio's good, loud and clear. So I'm using my phone connected to the microphone so that people can see it. So we're going to talk about smart cities. So Juan Daniel had said some really interesting things about smart cities. I gave him credit for it, and I said, let's do a room. And he said, well, we have to have K10 because I got the idea from her. And she's not in the room yet, but I think she'll be coming soon. And Will Bradbury, a lot of the talk was about how tunnels could play a role in smart cities. And Will Bradbury runs the YouTube channel Boring Revolution. He is my expert on boring company tunnels. So we're still a few minutes before the official start time for the room. So we'll chat a little bit. John Macri says, Tesla tanking. I do not worry about short-term share prices. I find it comical that the share price is down after good news. Short-term traders drive share prices. So I guess while we're waiting for the others, Will, do you have anything you want to say? I'm playing around with the oh yeah. So on the YouTube thing, I'm making the images larger of the people who are speaking. So Will, what do you have on your mind right now before we get started? How about smart cities, Will? You're muted. Oh, have we lost Will? Will, we can't hear you. You might have your mic muted or you might not be able to hear me. Will is in London. I think Juan Daniel is in Germany and K10 is somewhere on the West Coast, I think. So why is Tesla going down after a good quarter delivery? Because short-term traders drive the stock price, not long-term investors. Let me say this again. Short-term traders drive the stock price on a daily basis, not long-term investors. Long-term investors drive the stock price on a long-term basis. And I know for myself, I wasn't buying anymore. I'm full up. I only buy when I have cash, and I don't have free cash at the moment to buy more. Paul, yes, please unlock the room so others can attend. That would be great. Oh, you're going to invite you to moderate? Okay, I didn't know how that worked.
Just mod me and I'll push myself down to the audience when I'm done.
Oh, Juan Daniel is here. That's good. I invited you to speak.
Hello,
So
my friends.
Hold on a second. So Juan Daniel is here. Juan, your Twitter I'm streaming this to YouTube while we're going.
That's awesome. So hello to everybody here on YouTube. Also, I'm here on Clubhouse.
Yeah, so and we're waiting for K10. While we're waiting for K10, Juan Daniel, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about yourself and your interest in smart cities?
Of course, Warren, I will. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. And yes, so my name is Juan Daniel. I'm a Spanish guy, but I live in Germany. And sorry for my English. So I was just taught by YouTube and by school speaking English. So if I'm missing some words sometimes, sorry about that. So I'm into Tesla since 2014, and I started 2015 investing. I also was in contact in 2016 with Gary, I think, Gally, not Gary, Gally from Hyperchange, and yes, so I love the topic Elon Musk, the topic boring company, smart cities, Tesla, and sustainable energy, sustainable transport, and that's my big passion beside my music. So I'm a professional singer. I have some Spanish reggaeton pop music, like maybe you know Despacito or like this kind of famous Spanish songs, and I do something like this and around the world. So I'm looking forward for today's conversation, and I'm very happy to be here with you guys.
Okay, cool. So before K10 just stepped on the stage. Before I get started, K10,
Warren, do you want to mod me, please, and I'll unlock the room.
Are you? Oh, I needed to refresh. I didn't realize that was going on. It's the pull to refresh that got me. So, so K10 has joined the room. I'm going to ask K10 to introduce herself a little bit and explain her interest in smart cities. Tell us a little bit about yourself and explain your interest in smart cities.
Bye-bye.
Sorry?
All right. Was it enough, Warren?
Yes, no.
The introduction from myself.
Sorry. Sorry, I think I was muted. I'm still learning this app. So, K10, would you please tell people a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the audience and what got you interested in smart cities?
Yeah, K10 here. Some of you might know me as K10 on Twitter. I'm not sure what more people want to know about me. I'm just an avid supporter of everything Elon. He's, as we know, is revolutionizing the world and everything he does. The smart cities, we were talking about it in Clubhouse a few nights ago, one evening. I had thrown out the idea, people were talking about when they thought if younger generations of people in the next 10 years would actually be driving, and how the robotaxi network and things would execute. And I just had stated that I really believe that smart cities are the way things are going to move forward, that everything's going to be microchipped to the degree that things will just synchronizingly work together and in harmony. And for the major metropolises, I believe that it's just what we're going to see in smart cities. And especially with the Starbase Texas, I can just see that as an experimental, and the Toyota one. But anyways, I don't want to give too much away, but thank you, Warren, for hosting the room and inviting me and having us all here, and Juan and Will.
Cool. And just so you know, we're on YouTube. The screen is not on YouTube. Our voices are on YouTube, and I have images of us to represent us, and I'm trying to manipulate the screen so when you're speaking, your image is larger. Will, could you tell people a little bit about yourself and your interest in smart cities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a former construction project manager. I run the YouTube channel, A Boring Revolution. I've been interested in kind of skyscrapers and construction and tunnels and all sorts of things since I was very, very young. And, you know, this is a really interesting thing to talk about. I actually did my dissertation on kind of how you can build kind of prefabricated systems and different building techniques and that sort of thing. And that feeds in quite well to smart cities in terms of how you build automation into a city. And really interesting to talk about those kind of how that integrates with tunnels as well, and kind of other examples of how Tesla's technology can kind of feed into that. And I've basically worked on every kind of conceivable building that you could probably build. I've built multi-story residential buildings. I converted a building, worked in the water industry, I worked in commercial buildings. So I understand how things are built and how it can be done better. And potentially if there's some kind of smart city in and around Austin, hopefully it'd have some kind of strong opinions as to how Tesla or the Boring Company could do that. So that's kind of me, really.
Okay, so I guess I'll go with myself. My name's Warren Redlick. Hello. This is my channel. I'm a YouTuber. I make videos about, I'm also a lawyer and I do other things, but I'm a lawyer and I make videos about SpaceX, Tesla, Boring Company, Neuralink. And I heard, as I mentioned earlier, I heard Juan Daniel speaking about smart cities. I was fascinated by this. So I'm going to turn it over to Juan Daniel, and I'm going to put the pressure on you. And by the way, the audience says your English is fine. Tell us a little bit more about what excites you about smart cities. Where do you see that going in the future?
Yes. audience. First of all, thank you to your audience for my English. That's good. So yes, so my thoughts were like around, also because of all this kind of pandemic and COVID and everything, and I was just watching the people how they react this kind of circumstances, and I love the idea of going out of big cities like to smaller towns, and I was like looking and I see the opportunity for Tesla if you go out to a small village or town that they could like build the whole system behind it, because like they have the solar, they have the battery, they have like this kind of boring company going on also beside. So my idea was like, why not thinking even bigger and bigger and bigger what future Tesla products could be like. That's what we had, like Kay and me, like last week, this kind of room, Tesla Next product. And like, I'm very excited for, like, you see, the cities are built for cars, and why not taking it like with this kind of basic principles where you go like from the ground and you just design like a city like it could be like on nowadays, like with this kind of technology and like thought leader like Elon Musk, what is like possible. And that's what I was like, I love to be like visionary and to just think about what is possible. And that's what I would love to see, like a city with like boring tunnels, with like every house with a solar roof, with a battery pack, then like autobidder, what is like using and connecting all the houses of this kind of village and town, and make it like a sustainable place and a beautiful place with a lot of nature and a lot of like helping each other by sharing, for example, like the energy grid, you know, and to have like nice places where you can go to town without having like this kind of cars that are not very nice, because you have a lot of streets. And yes, I live here in Germany, so everything is also here built for the cars. Yeah? It's a big car country. So that's my thoughts on that. And I see also beside that like a big business opportunity to show this to some places that it is possible.
Okay, cool. So just really quick, I want to remind people, this is being streamed to YouTube, which was disclosed in the description of the event for people who are looking at it. So if you don't want to be streamed to YouTube, and the plan is the four of us will be speaking about the topic, and then after about a half hour, 45 minutes, I'll be inviting people up to ask questions one at a time, send you back to the audience when you're done. And after a half hour or so of that, I'll be inviting people up, and we'll have more of a free-for-all discussion. That some people like the free-for-all, I like the panel discussion. We'll see what works. So, Will, how do you see boring company tunnels playing a role in smart cities?
Yeah, so essentially what you can do with a boring company tunnel is you can open up land that previously you wouldn't consider using for a smart city. So like the idea that I'm going to propose today is kind of a smart city in between Austin and Houston. So you could put a smart city 50 miles away from Austin, and you could commute into Austin in 19 minutes with a boring company system. On top of that, if you're building from scratch, you've then got the opportunity to build in all your services from the ground up. From my personal experience, it's so difficult to start with an existing building and kind of adapt it for smart technology and for smart services. If you've got a blank piece of paper and you can use whatever building technique you so wish to use, you can have everything built in from scratch. So you could have ultra fast broadband, you can have district heating and district cooling. So you don't need to worry about having heating and cooling systems inside your home. You can have that piped in via tunnels, and lots of other things as well. Transport around the city, you can do that in your kind of smart tunnels. That allows you, like Juan said, you can remove roads as well from the surface. There's a lot of different things that you can do with tunnels as well. Wastewater removal, things like that. All that can be built in from scratch. You can hide it underground. A good example of this is this proposal in Saudi Arabia, in this city called The Line. Now, they've kind of gone in the same kind of direction that maybe the boring company could take, where basically everything's hidden underground. There's very, very few roads. Transportation is underground. All your utilities, your services, they're there from the ground one. What does that give you in terms of advantage? Well, obviously traveling around is ultra fast, like, 5 times faster than with current vehicles. All your heating and cooling is done in one kind of centralized place. That means, your utility bills are ultra cheap. You're thinking about, how do we live in a modern world? We get things delivered to our homes. Maybe that can be incorporated in there as well. You've got ultra fast broadband. Every conceivable surface that you can think of or utility can be incorporated into a tunnel. That can be built before even the first house is there. So potentially you could end up with, an absolutely beautiful city, lots and lots of green land, lots and lots of, amenities there for you in your local community. And it's, an amazing place to live. And obviously if you can do that, people are then going to look at that and say, hey, I can go work for Tesla, I can live here, I can get into work, I don't need to worry about congestion. And obviously, certainly from my point of view, I don't like commuting. If you can get rid of commuting and reduce it significantly, people are going to be wanting to live there. So that's kind of my thesis about how this could progress.
Okay, so let me just ask K10 if I can. My impression is that smart cities, when a lot of people talk about them, are new cities. Do you think this is something that can be done with cities, or is it really something where you do it with new cities?
I've looked at the topic a little bit. Smart cities can be something that Toyota is doing, like in Japan, making a city from the ground up. That is completely, just a second. Someone literally came to the door. That can be designed. Ideally, making a smart city from scratch would be perfect. We see old countries where they didn't lay out a city in a grid. And then there's cities like Chandigarh, India, where it's more advantageous for them to actually. Just a minute. Someone at the door from Tesla.
That's unusual.
Just kind of like a good example of a smart city is in South Korea. I don't know if anyone's seen that Sejong city that they've just built in the last 10 years.
No.
Sorry, yeah, literally, they're delivering my Tesla key literally at the door right now. So.
Oh
like,
not.
It's just like they want to sign off on it because it's like, look here, they're shipping through the mail. So, but anyways, building it from the ground up obviously would be more advantageous, but I do believe that we're going to see it retrofitted as big cities like Miami are not going to want to start from the ground up because they can't. So I love Will's idea, what he's saying about the Boring Company. If you guys don't follow him, go follow his account. He's got great stuff, keeping abreast with everything boring. But I believe they can do it retrofit, if that's the correct word, Warren, but it obviously is more advantageous from the ground up.
Well, Juan Daniel, do you have any thoughts on that? New cities versus retrofitting old cities?
Yes, just some thoughts. I think we can see both things. What we're seeing, please correct me, in Las Vegas. I think they're doing this kind of a Boring Company tunnel system with this kind of stations. That's something one step of making the city a little bit smarter because of building this kind of infrastructure. So I think we can see both. And my thoughts about that is if Tesla would start with from the ground up with a small village as an example, like this kind of Boring system in Las Vegas is an example. People or cities or smaller villages could see the opportunity and the potential to go on this kind of road. But I think we will see both things because we cannot destroy everything and build it from the ground up. So it's like a two-road thing.
Great. So let me ask you this, K10. What do you see as the biggest benefits of smart cities? Is it energy efficiency? Is it quality of life? What are some of the biggest things that make this a great idea?
So energy efficiency can be branched out in an umbrella of multiple things in the way that you see it. So I really think energy efficiency is the goal in general, just from time commutes. Will had addressed Austin, getting from anywhere from maybe Starbase to Austin, and people sending information and not having to to configure and stop and pause. Like the whole idea of like writing things on a computer was to do away with, I mean, there's different reasons, but like paper and pencil and breaking down trees and then other ways of communication, but just to make the efficiency of energy and communication a whole lot more quick and stuff like that. It would be nice if you had things that intuitively responded to you without having to give your password at everything or break it down or like reply or type it up. I mean, we're looking at, we could really brainstorm here, anything from like Neuralink and the ability just to send a message and things to respond to you. So energy, I think, is the ultimate goal with information, and that can be expounded upon a whole lot more. But Warren, what do you think?
I was worried you were going to turn this on me. So I think that one of the biggest things is quality of life, that we don't realize how, number one, if you live in a city where there are no cars, no pedestrians are going to get hit by cars. Just walking on roads, I think roads tend to draw heat. They tend to make cities warmer. They're unattractive. Imagine if you're walking on, grassy fields or nice paths with a lot of green space around. I think you can take up a lot less space. It can be shorter distances to walk to things and a lot more pleasant walks. I actually, it's just like there's so many potential things that are great. And then if you have these boring tunnels underneath, you can get from point A to point B in the city very quickly, very cheaply, and maybe go to other cities because they'll be connected to other cities. I just think there's tremendous opportunities for this to make life better in so many ways. And energy efficiency, using solar to power things, designing things so that you don't use as much energy. Those are some of the big ideas for me. So, Will, what are your thoughts? Can you describe, Will, particularly how you see in a smart city, how the tunnels, are they multi-layers? Are there key, like I would tend to think you would create a smart city, you would have the important stuff at the center, but maybe that's not necessary anymore. Maybe you have the important stuff at the perimeter, or maybe you can design them in different ways. What do you think about that? And then tunnels can facilitate either of those.
It's a very interesting question. I mean, quite a lot of developers like the idea of kind of doing away with kind of like a central business district and kind of putting, facilities into kind of like little pockets everywhere. So like everything that you need in terms of like getting food and things like that, that's all like located, next to you. You don't need to get in your car. You can just, walk there. I think the idea of roads is quite like actually removing all roads is interesting. I think if you like take a drone look over a typical development anywhere here in the UK, probably in the US as well, there's a lot of land, like literally 25 to 30% of the land on a new development is taken up by either parking or roads. And for me, that is just crackers. But, you have to have access for ambulances, you have to have access for fire services, things like that. So you're going to have some roads, but you could certainly, eliminate maybe 80% of them. I'd imagine kind of a smart city would be a combination of kind of low density housing and medium density housing, and then you'd have maybe like pockets of industry and pockets of kind of commerce and that sort of thing in there as well. It would look very, very different from how you imagine like a city like Austin or Houston looks today, or New York. In terms of like what actually is a smart city, I made like a bit of a list, which I thought would be quite useful to us. But you covered quite a lot of what I've already kind of written down really. So kind of number one thing, it facilitates the efficient use of resources. So obviously if you're building homes from scratch, they're going to be way, way more efficient than, the home that you're probably in today. You're looking at something around passive house standards, if not, slightly below that. It makes life easier, more convenient for everyone. So literally everything is automated in your home. It improves the health and well-being of its inhabitants. That's obviously key. It is affordable to live and work within it. If you're building things correctly in the right places, then, everyone should be able to get a house there and live there comfortably. It manages critical systems in-house and is thus 100% self-sufficient. So that's kind of like your energy generation and your heating and things like that. Maybe even food production and other things like that. This topic could go on forever. It is super low maintenance and highly adaptable. And that's kind of my how I visualize it really for a smart city.
All right, let me pursue this one thing that came to me while we were talking about this, and I'm gonna. What's the design of a smart city? So I was just sort of thinking about what I said there, like maybe the city is a circle, and a lot of the important stuff is on the outside, and the city's in the middle of some beautiful area, and you have great views. Maybe the housing is on the outside, and you're able to look out from your housing to look out on beautiful views, and then the industry's in the center. Maybe it's not designed in a circle. Maybe it's designed in another pattern. Where are things located in a smart city? Does it matter? Is there underground stuff? Juan Daniel, what do you think about all that?
That's a good question, Warren. So I would love not to see that big houses, I would love to see like this kind of future smart city, like I have this okay, that's also like what I love to see, because it's my okay, no, I don't have the English word, but what I would love to see is like villages, like small towns with a big park in the middle. It's a good idea. I would love to see that. My thought that I had while you were asking was like also the point of connectivity, because everything has to be connected. I don't want to interrupt now your question, but it was just a thought. I think cryptocurrencies, I'm not talking about Bitcoin and everything, but you have other cryptocurrencies. We think is the point we would need to build a smart city, that everything is like Internet of Things, IoT, where every device can communicate with each other, and can also like make the payments or whatever for the services you take. So, but back to your question, I love the idea of this kind of big middle nature park, and around everything you have like this kind of autonomous cars, roads where people can go in and out, and also like underground, like Will is talking about, like boring tunnels where you have the different destinations where you can go. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay, so I want to turn this question to Kristen, but before I do that, I just want to mention to people, we're having this conversation on Clubhouse. It's an app on the iPhone. It'll eventually be coming to Android. There is a great community of Tesla fans, and there's a club or group on Tesla on the Clubhouse app called Tesla Universe. If you're on the Clubhouse app, go up to the top and hit the green house if you're not already following Tesla Universe, and join it. If you want an invite to join Clubhouse, you need an iPhone or an iOS device, then you can DM me on Twitter, you can or email me, wredlick@gmail.com. I have 7 invites, or maybe I'm down to 6, but I'll probably get more. And if you need an invite, ask other friends. I find I'm having great conversations on Clubhouse all the time, and I recommend it. So K10, what are your thoughts on the shape of a smart city?
Wow. There's a lot that could be the shape of a smart city. Well, I think, just a side thought. When we look at a city, a lot of people like to joke around and say it looks like a motherboard. I did get a little motherboard kit to play with. It's not my forte. I'm not a software engineer. I don't do coding. I would love to learn, and I joked around about learning more, but I would just assume that the more closer together the major parts are, the parts that send energy out, the bigger packets of energy, the way things work, the better the more efficiency energy-wise it is, information coming and going. But then we have things like 5G, where things are sent over, distances, and we don't have to worry about things being hardwired, networked that way. But the layout of a city, the Toyota one was fascinating to watch that they're coming up with, just like from the centralization on out. And then you look at old cities, like the way the Greeks would lay out cities, or the Romans when they would put a city together. But it's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot more green spaces in the city. I think I really like the idea of taking things even more underground from the utilities. I think this is Will's forte more, but even the Boring Company, just not even using the tunnels that for, say, just for cars, but the Boring Company could put those tunnels down just to put the bulk majority of things under cities. There's even ideas of putting like bike paths underground. I'm not sure if it would be too scenic, but it was a fascinating idea. I think they won't be as congested with just a concrete jungle. It's going to be a lot more green, because the advantageous of putting things that are closer together, that the circuitry and the microchips, everything's talking to each other, you can actually enjoy the beauty of nature around you too, and things. I don't know. That just makes more sense to me. I think we'd all like that. So,
just really quick from the YouTube comments, a couple things that stood out to me. Mark Potocznik mentioned that with the new meat, I think he's talking about like lab-based meat from Memphis Meats, Kimball Musk's company that Kimball Musk is affiliated with, or Impossible Foods, Beyond Meat, that it may be possible to produce meat in town. And someone else suggested green skyscrapers with vertical farms. Do you see, Juan Daniel, I'll ask you first, do you see food production happening in a smart city? How do you see that happening?
Definitely. That's a great idea from your community, really. I'm also vegan, so I would love also to see like this kind of what Kimball Musk is doing with plant-based food, and this for a sustainable future. So that would make a lot of sense that every smart city has their own like food chain to have their food. Yes, of course. I would love it. And also like this kind of system with the HVAC, where this kind of what Elon was talking about, not only cooling and heating, like also like filtering this kind of water from the air and making like to drink water would be also a very important point for a smart city.
Cool. And Will, what are your thoughts on what else could be done? Kristen mentioned this. What are some things that could be done under a smart city with boring tunnels besides transportation? What else could we do?
So I did an episode on YouTube where I talked about a few different things. And one thing that kind of really interested me was this idea of like having just one central unit that makes, it's like a district heating. So every house in the smart city and every office and every commercial building is plumbed into this district heating system. So you've got hot water pumped in at high pressure, well over 100 degrees Celsius, and then you kind of utilize that, and that is much more efficient than having, typically in the UK we have a boiler in every house. We've also got things like, Kristen was talking about 5G. You can have a fiber optic connection to every single property. That's going to make so much faster. And you've got things like district cooling. Obviously, like in the UK, we think about heating, but obviously Texas is going to be quite hot during the summer. If you can remove those, massive air conditioning units away from the homes and just have one kind of, or maybe 4 or 5 central units and pump that in, you can have, high voltage electrical cables can go through your drinking water and things like that. Another idea, if you had kind of a large kind of bank of batteries in your smart city, you could then have that connected up to your superchargers or maybe some kind of charging bays. And that could be DC to DC, because obviously, you're charging, the superchargers is direct current. So you can have like a direct connection to that. There's so many ideas. I mean, I think Kristen's idea with the cycling as well is quite a decent idea. As soon as you get tunnels around about $5 million per mile, all these ideas become very, very viable, and it benefits everyone. It's a nice little revenue source for Tesla, the Boring company, and also the consumers as well make considerable savings due to the efficiency. So, all in all, obviously, like transport is going to be the main kind of bread and butter of the Boring company, but all these other things certainly add on to the pile there, as it were.
And let me turn this to K10. I don't remember who I talked to last, whether it was K10 or Juan Daniel. Sorry, I'm not that good at this, but I think it was Will that suggested somewhere between Houston and Austin as a location for a smart city. Do you have any places in mind, any geographic locations where you think would be good for smart city? And you're muted. I'll turn it to Juan Daniel. Juan Daniel. Oh, sorry. I don't know if you guys heard me say that. Kristen, do you have any ideas of locations you would want to see a smart city? Like I think Will mentioned between Houston and Austin.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything for a while there. I thought maybe it was me. I'm sure it was
that was me. It was me.
Okay. Oh, no worries. Obviously we're not in a perfect smart city. We have hiccups. Yeah. So locations that I would like to see more smart cities. No,
I just mean is there I think it was Will that mentioned. Will, correct me if I'm wrong. If I thought it was you, I thought you mentioned between Houston and Austin. Are there places that you think would be ideal, Kristen?
I mean, Starbase, I think we're all thinking the same thing, that Starbase, Texas definitely is a great experiment to make it into a smart city.
Okay, really quick, tell people what Starbase, Texas is, because not everyone might know what that means.
True. I take advantage. I forget that people here are not as big fans as all of us, but or they're just new to it. Starbase, Texas is a location that's going to be down by supposedly Boca Chica in the Brownsville area, where Elon is building and assembling the starships for SpaceX. So this is going to be, I mean, there's still speculation a lot about it. It's obviously going to be an area where maybe, SpaceX engineers that work solely on the Starship will be living, but a lot of other people. And if we do see this, hopefully, I mean, we all hope that the Starship gets to the moon and gets to Mars. This will be quite a central hub on Earth for contact going to and fro between the planets, or just out there in space. So it's going to be a cutting edge city, and I think that Elon, being as visionary and cutting edge as he is, we're going to see Starbase being built up with the idea of making it as smart as we can. I mean, that just makes sense, the word smart in itself, but to make it a smart city and experiment with these things. There's a lot of different ideas, from HVAC systems that Elon has joked around about that we would love to see, but that's what Starbase, Texas is going to be. And I took a survey. I don't know, I can retweet it for anybody who follows me, and I asked people if they were thinking of moving to Starbase or to Austin, because everyone has seen a lot of people move to Austin in the tech world, and Austin and Elon himself. But yeah.
Okay, and real quick, Juan Daniel, I'm going to start opening it up to questions from the audience. But Juan Daniel, do you have any places in the world, on Earth for starters, where you imagine a great place for a smart city? Maybe not in the US, but like Europe or somewhere else?
You have good questions and hard questions in one. And not a lot of time to think about it, but I just can't say, like in Europe, like especially in Spain and Italy and everything, the old cities are very close together, like small roads, like for smaller cars. It's different than in the US. So I think it would be very hard to build like a smart city in Europe. So that's, I think, where I come from. It's kind of village project to start with it, and then to find solutions to build it into like this kind of cities. So I'm at the moment living in Frankfurt. That would be nice if you have like smaller cities, but I don't know, really. I couldn't say like a place where we could start it. Like in Darmstadt, it's a city like 1 hour away from me. They already started building some connections with buses and trains, were like included into the system with for students with the kind of apps on the phones. But for checking like automatically some stuff, it's a little bit more tricky to explain it now, but I could send you like a link. Maybe it's interesting for your community after this talk, of this kind of smart city in Darmstadt. But for sure, I don't have any idea like here in Europe where we could start doing something like this, just like starting with villages. That's my only thought.
Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into it was about Mars. Is the idea of smart cities on Earth a good place to start preparing for smart cities on Mars? What do you think about that, K10?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think some of you may know that follow space and SpaceX and NASA, but they already have different places they're testing the environments of different living conditions, like in the Jordan Desert, like for Mars. So there's different places that NASA has set up to start testing this stuff. And we are most definitely going to want to have things as smart and as advantageous as they can be. So I think so, for sure, we can make tech work really well. And just a side note to that, like people say we're going to get people out there, but I think we're going to see probably a good army of little robots working for us on Mars, where we get a lot of humans out there.
Okay, now real quick, Alex, just so you know, this video is being streamed to YouTube, and people be able to replay it. But your last name isn't visible to anyone. Actually, your name isn't visible to anybody. So, what question do you have, if for anyone? What's on your mind?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Warren, for bringing me up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, by the way, sound in Clubhouse is much better than on YouTube. I checked both. I know it's recorded. So what's on my mind, right? My last name, by the way, is Damien. I just heard from my landsman, Juan Daniel, if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm also from Frankfurt, Germany. And what I have like daily on my mind is how I'm like Frankfurt. I'm mine, yeah. It's on the river mine. And in order to come to my work, I'm a software developer. I have to use Autobahn highway and drive around 11 or 12 kilometers to my work. But the interesting thing, if I could make a direct line from my job to my house, it would be not more than 2 kilometers. And it's a huge problem. I'm like dreaming to have some kind of VTOL or a Cybertruck that I could use and just float over the river, because it's so close, place A to place B, but I have to drive all the way around. It's kind of think what I would take in consideration when building smart cities, so that this problem could also be solved.
Okay, before I let Emmett comment, did Will, Juan Daniel, or K10, anything you want to say about that?
And first of all, you almost said it right, Alex, Juan Daniel, but it's just take it easy. You can also say JD. First of all, nice to meet you here. Like, we are almost close here in Germany. So, yes, I know what you're talking about. But you know how Germany is. It's a lot of bureaucracy. How do you say it? If it's a lot of bureaucracy in English?
Exactly. Also, Germans like to write letters, not digitally, but like...
There's a lot of talk and less action. So it's difficult to see smart cities in Germany. So, yes, thank you for the input, Alex.
Okay. All right. Emmett, what's on your mind?
Great discussion, everyone. And hello. I have a comment and then a question for Will. The comment is that I envision smart cities having the goal of each freestanding structure being modeled after tree. Trees have leaves, they have the main trunk, and they have the roots. So the leaves would be the solar panels that are on top of the structure, collecting energy. And you have you have drilling for geothermal cooling and heating that are like the roots, which would go in the earth. Maybe it's just as low as 100 feet. And that allows for the heating and cooling to be to use up less energy, because the constant temperature of the earth is about 55 degrees. So if it's 100 degrees outside, you only have to cool the difference between the 55 degrees and the 100 degrees. And if it's freezing outside, you only have to heat the difference between the 55 and the temperature outside, or whatever temperature you want the place to be inside, and including things like Tesla HVAC. Vertical farming was already mentioned, and shaping the city in beautiful nature-inspired designs, like some organisms are really beautiful, and having just a very organic type of feel and design. It already been mentioned, a lot of trees and greenery and car-free zones, those types of things. So those inspire me with smart, beautiful cities. And then the question for Will, if you want me to wait and ask Will my question after
go ahead.
People
go
comment,
ahead.
Okay. My question for Will is regarding smart cities on Mars, specifically the tunneling, the boring tunneling there. How will the boring tunneling machines? How do you see those working and cutting through Mars? Have you investigated that at all?
So just the kind of first things you said, absolutely 100% agree with that. I think that we should be taking a totally different approach to how we, build modern structures. Some people are doing it. There are some great companies out there that are using, techniques that, are very fast to assembly and very highly sustainable. What I will say about the Boring Company on Mars, I'm actually doing, or I have just completed an episode with To the Future about operating Boring machines on the lunar surface. But the kind of principles behind that also reflect onto to Mars as well. It is very possible. It's difficult to say how a Boring machine will operate on Mars without knowing the exact geology, but I'm expecting the Boring Company to build machines that work in all forms of geology. So I'd expect that will work very, very well on Mars. The kind of issue that I had when I kind of did this combination with To the Future was how do you get the CBM to Mars? You know, obviously it's a very kind of heavy element. How are you going to manufacture it on the Martian surface? That was my only real concern. I think it's very, very doable, and there's a lot of good use cases on the on Mars and on the lunar surface for proof rock and other TBMs. Just to pick up on another thing you talked about, which is geothermal energy. So I know there's a couple of companies doing this, including Dandelion. It might surprise you, but I don't like that approach. I think that modern homes, certainly passive house standard homes, are so well built, so well insulated, so airtight. You could get away with, you know, maybe two, maybe even just one electric panel heater in there, and that would pretty much, you know, do your heating for the entire most of the year, 365 days of the year. So that's kind of my opinion on that. I think there are use cases for geothermal in older buildings, but in kind of newly built passive house kind of standard buildings, or even just close to passive house, I personally would go to a more simpler solution that just takes electricity directly from solar or wind, and then it's on your wall there, as it were.
All right, thank you. And Joy joined us. Joy, what question or comment do you have?
Hi, Warren, Will, Daniel, and Kristen. Thank you. I have two thoughts. When Will and you guys were talking about doing smart cities on Mars, I was thinking, what are your guys' thoughts about maybe having a smart city that's completely in a bubble, and then we have like a Tesla camp mode climate control for everybody, even on Earth? So I'm just wondering what you guys think of that, instead of having the homes exposed to the natural elements. Would you be open to having a smart city that's kind of living in a climate-controlled bubble? That's my first thought.
I think you need to watch the Seinfeld episode where they're arguing over the heater. different people want.
I did think about that, yes, but I was thinking, you know, let's say we go outside and, you know, go to a park, and, you know, we don't want it to rain, we don't want it to snow. Would people want to live in a climate controlled environment outside, and then they can choose their own, you know, temperature at home?
Yeah, it certainly makes sense on Mars that you might be under a bubble, but because there isn't going to be air in this air. K10, what do you think about that?
About a bubble?
About I think a bubble city on Earth. That we're sharing the same heating and cooling, and maybe that's more efficient, and also we don't get rained on. And would that be more attractive or less attractive, or maybe it works in some situations but not others?
That's fascinating. There's a TV series that has a bubble like that. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one. I like shows like that, but it's the one where they wake up and they can't figure out, they start noticing that they're in some kind of bubble, the whole city itself. I don't know about the logistics of actually doing that. It sounds like it's something that people have been toying with the idea for a long time, but I don't know how you would do it. I mean, I think it's a fun idea, but I think you would need the rain to come in. I mean, it can create its own environment. And we've heard of super like places where they've created its own environment. It actually created humidity and rain. Rainforests do it, but I don't know. I don't know about that one. I don't think it's on for Tesla and SpaceX. I don't think it's on the radar. And then you do watch Mars, how they possibly make ideas of doing something like that. So I really don't know. It's not my forte, but it's interesting.
Juan Daniel, what do you think of that?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your question, Tesla. Maybe we're already living in this kind of bubble with manipulating weather, but it's a different topic. I don't think. I don't know. I think it's important that nature is also nature, but it could be like an interesting project to see what would be the outcome of such a city in a bubble where the weather is like controlled. That's what you was talking about, right?
Yes.
Oh, of course. Okay. So yes, it's interesting. So to see it, but I think it's also a bit already artificial. You know, it's a little bit artificial. I don't know if I would like something like this. I'm a very nature guy, so maybe the wrong guy to ask.
Okay, and Joy, did you have another comment?
Yes. The second thing is I came into this room a little late, so I don't know if this topic has been discussed, but what are your takes on connectivity, like, internet access for everyone in the city? I brought this up because I remember encountering a startup, 5 or 6 years ago called Venium, based out of the Bay Area, I believe. And at that time, they were trying to solve the connectivity issue in the urban area where people don't get constant Wi-Fi connection on their phone, or there's a dead spot where their cellular connection doesn't reach. So they came up with an idea at the time to do mobile internet broadcasting on like garbage trucks. So as these garbage trucks drives around the city, it'll provide mobile hotspots for people to connect to. The company itself has morphed into more sophisticated technology since then. And I was wondering, I was thinking perhaps, I don't know if you guys have thought about this, what if the cars in the city or any type of transportation or, cars going through the boring tunnels underground, they can come together and create a mobile mesh network so that everybody, regardless, when you're home, you may have the stationary Wi-Fi access, but when you're outside, when you're walking down the street, when you're running, you don't have to worry about having any type of dead zones because you have this mobile mesh network that's created by the vehicles. I'm just wondering what you guys' thoughts are on this.
I would just say I think connectivity would be built in as part of the design. But Will, do you have any thoughts on the engineering of connectivity in a smart city?
I just think if you start with a blank piece of paper and you're able to connect up kind of every building with an adjacent tunnel, every single household would have fiber optic, and it would be the fastest fiber optic that you could possibly put in, and that would be very affordable because you wouldn't need to dig a trench and drop it in and fill it in. It'd just be in a tunnel, and it'd be there to service and move around. So I think. There was another company, I don't know if you've heard of them, they were called Starry, and they had some kind of interesting idea of putting these kind of mobile broadcast stations on lampposts and things like that and shooting broadband around these estates. But I still feel that the wired connection is kind of the fastest, most effective way of doing it when you're starting from scratch, certainly from like a smart city point of view. That's my opinion.
Great. Paul, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to mention I'm here in Austin, Texas, where the Boring Company is, and I'm eager to learn more about what they're doing. I was just reading through their FAQ on the boringcompany.com, and it's pretty interesting. The Proof Rock machine is designed to launch directly from the surface and will achieve 10 times the speed of previous boring machines. I think Austin really needs tunnels for traffic because our traffic is totally out of control and cannot handle the influx of Californians that we're getting right now. So this is Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas.
So I think Will is probably the expert on the boring machines, but I would just want to add, and this relates to something K10 said, and we were talking about where would the ideal city be. Elon recently tweeted this cryptic tweet like Austin++, And he also said something about there being a major housing shortage in Austin. And it made me think Elon's planning a smart city near Austin that maybe would call New Austin or something like that, or Austin plus plus. Do you think, Paul, there's potential for a new city to be built close to Austin, maybe with a boring tunnel connecting the two cities?
Absolutely. I built a small home village east of Austin myself. It's very small. It's just 15 acres, and trailers, RVs, big houses, tiny houses, a mix, co-working spaces. Smallhomevillage.com is the website, but that's just a very tiny prototype compared to what's the potential is for smart cities. And east is good because West Austin is a lot more glamorous. You've got the hill country, but you've got rocks and not much water. And east, you've got a lot of good water as long as we can keep protecting it. We've got a great aquifer, and the soil is excellent, and there are big tracts of land still available, thousands of acres, and the land is beautiful. There are water features like creeks and lakes. I think there's tremendous potential for smart cities east of Austin, and I'd love to be a part of any effort in that direction.
Okay, just to be clear, I lived in Texas. I lived in Houston, Texas for 4 years, and we often say in the SpaceX fan community that space is big. Well, Texas is almost as big. There's a lot of room in Texas for a smart city. K10, what do you think about a smart city near Austin, like a second Austin? Do you think Elon's tweets anywhere come close to hinting that?
That's really, can you hear me? I like that idea. I like to, some of us like to take Elon's tweets, and he is cryptic. We know it. And he says things, and some of us are right on, but I like that idea of Austin plus plus, because Austin plus plus will be a true scenario. I mean, a few of us were joking back in December, finding out that a lot of, Giga Texas is going up and people are moving there, like the real estate's going to skyrocket. Like, we should buy something, because it would turn over 3-4 times by the time you sold it. But it does need more housing, and it needs housing for people that's affordable. So it's going to happen at some point. I'm sure there's a lot of developers and investors getting in there, but the opportunity, I think, like you're saying, Austin plus plus, Elon putting that out there, it's on his mind. I mean, we're talking about building out from Austin, but then we've got like Will and his ProFric and thinking about building down from Austin. Like maybe, I don't know, would Elon build even part sub-cities under Austin? Like, would people be willing to do that? Can you even do that? Would it be comfortable? But Mars might be something that they joke around that you need to build under the surface. So is this another opportunity to flex that or experiment with that? I don't know. It's Austin plus plus is definitely, I think, right on, Warren, but I'm not sure if that's what he meant, but it is true.
Okay. And I just want to add before C speaks, I just wanted to add that Elon also tweeted, and this is in reference to what Paul said earlier. He also tweeted I forget, there was some reference, maybe it was the Boring Company mentioned something about Austin chalk. I think there's a sense that the land on the ground underneath Austin in that part of Texas is very good for boring tunnels. Will, do you remember that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the chalk tweet. The chalk under Austin, obviously it's variable, but it's just perfect for tunneling, really. It's not too soft, it's not too hard, and it's very kind of consistent. It's fairly unfractured. So in terms of boring tunnels, really that is kind of like almost as good as you're going to get, really. And I suspect as well that chalk would make excellent bricks. People have said to me in the past that they won't buy boring bricks because they kind of look a bit cheap. But if you have kind of like a nice mixture of chalk in there, that might be a bit more aesthetically pleasing. So I think in terms of building tunnels in and around Austin, like you say, there's a lot of land there. You just need to find someone who's willing to sell it for a good price. You build, 100-acre city there. People are going to want to live there. Especially if you give it a cool name. Maybe Tesla One or something like that with Roman numerals. I noticed on the map, I was having a look just before we came on. There's a large reservoir east of Austin, and there's a coal station there. I'm just thinking, when that coal station disappears, you've got to make, you've got a grid connection there already. Why not, you take that down and use that, and then you're right next to a reservoir as well, which is perfect. So, so much potential. I really hope Elon Musk or maybe Tesla get into building a smart city. Maybe they partner up with another startup. There's another great company, forget what they're called, K10, who build kind of prefabricated, very highly insulated, efficient homes. That would be brilliant, and people would love to work for Tesla if they could get access to affordable housing, because quite often, you don't want to move somewhere if the cost of housing is excessive. And I really hope that happens in the future.
All right, C, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I think Elon, I think about build the city, smart city in Earth is a sample, maybe it's a prototype city for the Mars. Like the 3D city is part on the ground, part in surface, and everything is connected by tunnel.
Okay, thank you for that. So I want to invite everybody up now, because I think we've gone long enough with the single person Q&A, and if people want to come up and have a more casual discussion, we can do that. And at the same time, I want to thank Clubhouse. If you're not familiar with Clubhouse and you have an iOS device, I can see Landon's here. Landon is a part of the Clubhouse community and Tesla community. There's a great community of Tesla fans who are talking all the time. It's almost like any time of day you can go on Clubhouse and there's a conversation. I chose this time because I think K10 is on the West Coast. I'm in New York. Will's in London. Juan Daniel is in Frankfurt, Germany. And, it's like if you go on in like the afternoon, you can sort of catch everybody. If you go on in the morning, it's the Europeans. If you go on in the late enough, then the Japanese are having lunch. It's a crazy time. But it's a great thing. So I want to encourage people to, if you're interested, join Clubhouse, have some great conversations. And Landon, what's on your mind?
Thank you for having me up. I have lived in a lot of major cities around the country. I've lived in LA, Houston, Washington, D.C., and Denver. I'm 50 years old, and I've worked all my career in the car business to retire young, and I have been retired for about 5 years. So my question is whether you see the smart cities purposefully including all kind of ages and states of life as far as early life and education. You'd be with your parents. Then working life, it seems like smart cities might be focused on working 9 to 5 kind of lives. And then would you want to have a different kind of inclusion of people that are working towards retirement or retired?
I'm going to turn that one to Juan Daniel first. What do you think?
Just missed the last sentence. I don't know. I had some trouble with the connection. Can you please repeat it?
What do you think about? Go ahead, Landon. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Just briefly. Do you see all ages of people in different stages of life built into a smart city for different focuses on what you do with your day to day?
If I can turn that question around a little bit. Is it that there's one smart city for all ages, or are there smart cities for retirement communities and a separate smart city for young workers and another one for young families? What do you think, Juan Daniel?
That's an awesome idea and thought, of course. But I think we are very familiar. There's like family people, like the Spanish people. So I think we would love to see that we are all like in one smart city together. But it would be an awesome idea if you have like a smart city. For example, if you are retired and then you want to have a relaxed life and you have your own space and everything is there. But it's like with the bubble idea from Tesla Joy. I think it's nice to check it and to see what would be the outcome. But I think we love to be together in different ages, and I think this is the future. But we could see something like this. That's a good idea. As free. Thank you for that.
Let me just ask K10, what do you think about that question?
Restate the question just so I understand that I answer it correctly, please.
What do you think about the idea of, is a smart city something that's for all ages, or are there different smart cities, some for all ages, some for retirement, some for families, some for young, singles, and then some, of course, where we can get all the teenagers and keep them away from the rest of us?
That is funny. I mean, because you go to resorts that are adult only, and you go to, yeah, that is true. Like, there's places where more, yeah. I would think that, like, say, for instance, we use Toyota's example in Japan, where they're making a smart city. They're going to have to make it family friendly. Of course, it's going to be more Japanese centered in the way that they think and live with their lifestyles. We already know that there's more corporate discipline in Japan than in most nations in the world. Like, I mean, I can't vouch for China and Korea, but I think it's going to be inclusive of everybody according to what other standards are placed in that country. China had the one-child policy for a while. Now it's more than one child. But I think they'll be inclusive. But I wouldn't doubt that you will see smart cities, and they won't be that big in my opinion. Maybe more like smart resorts. I don't know, that are just for adults only. So.
Okay, and I'm going to start. I'm going to stop actively moderating. So go ahead and speak.
This question is near and dear to my heart. I'm indigenous, and it's real common in indigenous cultures that the entire community is there. And if there's a gathering, if you've got every generation living present at the gathering, then it's a healthy gathering. So just from the spirit and exchange standpoint, I think that's really important. And I remember being pretty young, teenager, starting at University of Washington, and our next door neighbors were a retired couple. And the wife was starting to get ill, and she had to stay in a nursing home, but she'd come back to the neighborhood on the weekends, and she said how much she missed the kids playing. And one of the great things about having elders in the community is that when parents are busy working and being weekend warriors or whatever may be going on, the elders can play with the kids and give them a whole bunch of attention, because even big sisters and big brothers who have little kids in their family, sometimes they're all up in their business and they wish they weren't. And that, it can be nice for everyone having all the generations present. But I do love the idea of having a bubble zone in the city where rock concerts and raves and what have you can happen without bothering anyone else in the city.
So it's a soundproof bubble. And I want to invite other people if you want to come up and speak. This is now a free-for-all. I'm not moderating. I want to thank Clubhouse for setting up this app. If you're interested in Clubhouse, check the link in the description below. If you have iOS, if you don't, wait. That'll be coming soon on Android. Anybody else want to raise your hands? Come on up. Paul, did you have something you wanted to say? I keep trying to not actively moderate, and I can't stop myself. Paul?
You're doing a good job, Warren.
Paul, you might be muted if you're trying to speak. All right. I don't know if Paul's still there. Emmanuel or Emmett? Sorry.
Just wanted to invite everyone just to raise your hands if you think you want to just be part of the free conversation. And the advantage is you can kind of jump in a more appropriate time, in a very timely way. If you're in the audience, you have to raise your hand. Someone has to bring you up, and then you also have to wait for your moment to speak. If you're already up on the stage, it's much easier. So there's a lot of room. Just feel free to raise your hands if you're likely to chime in at any time.
I'd certainly like to allow anybody else to go ahead since I've already asked a question, but I did find it curious after being through at least a year of COVID and kind of stuck in the house. I'm really a little surprised to hear so many people want to live underground. For me, when people say, oh, do you want to go to Mars? Would you go to Mars if you had the chance? No, I would love to travel in space, but I don't want to live in Mars because I love the weather here in the mountains of Colorado and going out in the sun. I like going to the beach, but I just found it curious.
Yeah, I agree. I'd much rather be, 100 foot above ground than 100 foot underground.
And I agree with that too. I'm not one to be in close spaces. I don't have any phobias, but you can find me like feeling very uncomfortable in really tight spaces. So even the NASA astronauts, when people are like, I'm so excited to get on the Dragon and just like be stuck on the Dragon or be on the Starship going around, that doesn't sound like fun to me. I think you'd have to use some kind of cognitive dissonance to like occupy yourself. But I mean, going to Mars is going to be a reality of living underground. So it's going to be these high-minded people who definitely have had a dream and goal to go there and see something. But it doesn't sound like fun to me either, L3. I have to agree with you, but maybe some people like it, and that's not me.
Just real quick on that, I think you got to recognize there are 7 billion people on the planet, and if you want to build a 1 million person colony on Mars, you only need 1 out of 7,000 people to go along with it. So you don't. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that half the people like the idea. You only need a very small percentage. Jack, you came up on the stage. Anything on your mind?
Well, just the Austin plus plus. I wanted to give maybe an alternate potential meaning. I'm not saying it's what was meant by it, but if you listen to Andre Karpathy's, he did a podcast recently on AI, and he talked about how Elon recruited him at kind of just the right time. He was kind of getting antsy after doing research for so long and stuff, and eventually made the move to Tesla. Now, I think something similar might have happened with Lex Friedman. Lex was getting really frustrated with his research at MIT and was thinking about leaving, and he has just recently moved to Austin. So my suspicion is that once Lex had officially made the move to Austin, that's when Elon tweeted out Austin plus plus. And if you look at a response to that tweet, Lex Friedman responded underneath saying, operation executed successfully, awaiting further commands. So that's my take on Austin plus plus, is that just Austin received a new resident in the form of Lex Friedman.
Okay, so all it was welcoming Lex to Austin, Texas. It wasn't anything more like the rest of us want it to be.
That's my suspicion. I don't know that for a fact, but that's kind of my take on it from the combination of tweets and like what has happened recently with Lex and Austin and Elon.
Well, let me throw out a curveball here. You know, there's clearly going to be a high demand for housing in Austin, Texas. It's pretty clear that it's going to be tough to build enough housing for everyone that's coming if Elon's planning on adding 10,000 jobs with Tesla alone in the next year or two. A lot of people want Tesla to get, including me, want Tesla to get into the housing business, to start building housing. They're building factories. Does anybody think Tesla could build housing?
100%. That's what I would also love to see, because like if they have this kind of bricks they're building out of digging the tunnels, like they have different pieces to build a house. Like if it's the battery backpack, like with this kind of power watts, the solar roof, the bricks, and then of course this kind of talented people for being like engineers. I think this would be a big opportunity for them, because like houses are needed where they're starting to build their factories, and like the next step for the smart city, you know, to build everything in house, and maybe to have like this kind of vertical integration for the smart cities also in the future.
Yeah, totally agree. The problem with the construction industry in the UK is it's probably the same in the US and parts of Europe as well. Is we're still sticking little bits and pieces together to build a house, and that's not how you should build a house. I worked on a job in Hull. This must have been 10 years ago, and that was a prefabricated timber frame. And that thing, I was on there from like week 5, and that thing was finished at week 40. It was just done like that. All the panels were brought in on flatbeds, pre-insulated, all the wall and floor panels just drops in, fixed into place. And that's how we should be building houses. And you could build all your automation, all your smart services in there. And you should build it like a car. You should build it like a car on a production line. And you could even go one step further than that. You could have a fabrication yard in the smart city and actually build parts of a house in the smart city, like the roof. The roof, for example, is a great example. There's so many elements that go into a roof. If you could bring those elements to one place, assemble them, and then drop them in one big piece, that would save so much time and be so much more efficient. And it'll be pre-wired, pre-ventilated, that sort of thing.
Will, that was very interesting. How do you feel about 3D printed cities?
I'm not a big. I can see examples of where it works, but what I've seen is where they kind of 3D print it using kind of like a specialized mortar mix with kind of quick drying cements. You don't want is wet trays, because you've got to wait for that to cure. By far the most fast, efficient, kind of environmentally friendly way of building homes is prefabricated timber systems. There's lots of companies in the US that do that, like kit homes and things like that. I think 3D printing homes works well for single-story buildings. I've seen it done in parts of Africa where it makes perfect sense because you've not got the skills to build homes, like timber-framed homes. But
we lost Will there. He got bounced out.
You know what? I accidentally pressed something because I was looking at his profile. That was me. I'm so sorry. My bad.
I didn't know we could bounce each other out. This could be a fun game.
I know, that was me. I'm so sorry, Will. Forgive me.
He's back. Will, you're back.
So sorry if you disagreed with me.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I was probably waiting on a bit there, but I like 3D printing in a certain extent. But I've got experience using prefabricated timber buildings, and I just think that is the future. And you can have it pre-wired, and you can build everything into the panels, drop it in on site. You could build like an 8-story building in like 20 weeks. This is how good it's getting. So I think that is the future for smart cities and offices and various other things.
Okay, Will, you missed it.
Did China build a building in 3 weeks, though? Anyway, it's just a side note.
Yeah, that steel one. I think it was like 60 stories. It was incredible. Yeah.
It was wild, yeah. Anyway, sorry, Warren.
No, I was just letting Will know, because he may not realize it. You were bumped out by accident. It wasn't intentional.
It hurts.
Yes, that was me. Sorry.
So, Will, let me ask you this. I'm planning on building my cyber cabin, and it seems like steel buildings are the least expensive way to build them. Am I wrong?
Interesting. So is that some kind of like METSEC system, like an ice fan system? What does it look like?
I think they use steel pipe for the structure, like 20. I don't remember. I think it's 12. I think it's 12 gauge steel, like pipes for the structure, and then 26 gauge steel for the walls. And then it's like, you basically all you get is the structure, and then you have to do everything else yourself. But it's a very inexpensive way to build a structure in America.
I have a friend who worked on a job, and I've actually used METSEC steel before, and they built like a 5, I think it might have been 6-story building with steel, like C-section steel, and that's pretty good. Well, I think in terms of costs of steel in the UK, maybe it's a bit higher, but yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it as well. I've seen that done with like prefabricated wall panels and prefabricated floor cassettes, and even the roof as well. That's prefabricated off-site and dropped into place. And you could build a big building in less than 20 weeks, including the foundations, if you do it correctly.
Can I just throw out on the general topic of smart cities? It seems to me that rather than there being one design for a smart city and some genius is going to come up with a simple design for the smart city, maybe it's that 3 or 4 different designs or smart cities are tried out, and we learn what works the hard way. This worked, this didn't work, or maybe they all work and different people like different kinds of smart cities. Does that make sense?
I was just going to say, Warren, it's just an idea that popped in my head. Maybe they have different cities, but with different design styles, and people make a choice. So like, my question about whether you want to live in a bubble or not, right? So Daniel's like, I don't know, I'm an outdoors guy. I prefer to experience the elements. So maybe there is a city that's not in a bubble. So people like Daniel that likes to do outdoor stuff, they prefer the 4 seasons, they can go live there. And then for people like me, I'm in California, so I'm like spoiled by the weather. I prefer a climate controlled bubble city. Maybe I'll choose to go live there. Just a thought.
I want to welcome Nick to the stage, but beforehand, I wanted to circle back to the Tesla City. topic. And I think there'll be a lot of cross-pollination between the different companies that Elon has started. But I really think it makes sense for the first Tesla city to actually be under SpaceX, where they manage it and it's their responsibility, and just coordinating all the different things with the other cities, because so much of it can be applicable to Mars. And bandwidth-wise, I don't really feel like Tesla could stand up a team that could do all the smart city stuff. I do know that they're doing roofing, and they have had some model homes, but it might make more sense for SpaceX to be spearheading it, and it be more of a SpaceX city that Tesla is part of and the Boring Tunnel is part of.
Nick, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because as you guys were bringing up multi-plan designs, you would definitely want multi-plan designs based on the environment it's being placed in. Like, if anything's in the hurricane paths, you want a different construction from anything that's basically like in California that needs to be earthquake proof. So I think you need to really look at where the environment is being placed in. And there's different kind of building materials you'd use for each different scenario of where it is environmentally as well. So that's one thing you would definitely see. So if you had one smart person designing all of that, you'd hope that they're also taking those into consideration as well. Because I think the design and building materials you'd use would have to be unique to each environment.
I brought Amy up, but somehow she's moved back.
I made her a moderator. Maybe she didn't want to be up.
Amy, if you want to come up again, just raise your hand.
She knows. So we've gone for an hour and 15 minutes, and I think this has been a great conversation. Does anybody have any other, nobody's raising their hands. I think we've covered the topic pretty well. We can end it now unless somebody else has something they want to add.
Just one question, for everybody up on stage. What would be your favorite, feature in a smart city, what you would love to see?
I kind of I don't remember who said it, the idea of a domed area that's soundproof so you can have great concerts and it doesn't annoy anyone else, but it's a great place to have an event.
Just one thought. Austin, Texas is a divided city. It's divided between east and west by I-35, Interstate 35. I think a great project for the Boring Company would be to put I-35 underground, and that would unify the city east and west. And this is something that the city council and the city's been talking about and speculating about for years. But that would be the biggest single thing that would unify Austin and bring people together in Austin, Texas, I think.
This is, by the way, a common problem in many cities, that you put in a bypass or you put in something, and I've seen this in multiple cities where that big highway divides people up. And actually, where I live right now, the Florida Turnpike divides West Boca from Central Boca. Interstate 95 divides Central Boca from East Boca. So yeah, I agree.
And touching up on that, kind of what I was talking about with Chandigarh, India, there's some cities in India that have been laid down intentionally on a grid infrastructure-wise. It's easier. A lot of older cities, really older cities, I'm talking about hundreds of years old, have a hard time bringing in the newer infrastructure and ways of things being. So totally agree with that. That movie or the TV series I was talking about with the dome, Tessa Joy may know this. It's called Under the Dome, if you guys are looking for something that talks about living under a dome. So
my request for the smart city would also be transportation, but a little different than, moving the freeway. I would like to have safe, private transportation where I could get across town and go somewhere without getting on public transportation with, 20 other people, but also without, firing up a gas car or even driving myself.
Well, Landon, I'm going to add on that, and this is me going completely Star Trek mode. I would love to have a transporter.
All right.
So, but my vision of a podcar robotaxi, where it's a single passenger robotaxi running in Boring Company tunnels under the town, and they're small enough, that would work pretty good, right?
Yes, it would.
Or flying cars. Think of Fifth Element.
I always think of the Jetsons.
I want to follow up on that question. If there was a favorite feature and asking everyone up on stage to answer.
Yes, yeah.
Me personally, I'm excited about every single vehicle being either electric, no combustion engines of any sort anywhere in the city. That's the thing I'm looking forward to the most. And I also want to, regarding Landon's comment of the tunnel to East Austin and West Austin, that's what I call Austin plus plus.
I would share my wish. Like, I would love to see like free energy for the city for everybody, like by sharing the like roofs, and to give such kind of freedom to the people by free energy.
I can't believe no one has mentioned that there would be Bitcoin mining at the center of the city. That's like
That would be really
I was
cool
thinking about it.
underground.
I was thinking about it, but crypto and Bitcoin is a little bit a hot topic here on Clubhouse.
I would have to say mine would be automation and smart homes. You know, just basically having all the tech and all the buildings work for you, as opposed to doing a lot more maintenance yourselves. So the smarter the home can be, you know, not only depending on HVAC and things like that, there's ways you can construct the homes and buildings to be pretty energy efficient, as well as automated.
And I'd have to add to what Juan and Nick said. I look forward to seeing solar being the way to power the city and not something like coal or other such means, but to have the city be more green and enjoy where we go without having to drive through a concrete jungle. But yeah, that sounds beautiful to me.
Does a smart city have windmills?
Does a smart city have windmills?
Only the ones that are exposed to the elements.
Why?
Yeah, it has windmills.
If it makes sense due to the environment.
I will be a
It's
bubble.
depending on the location. Where if you have a lot of wind, it makes definitely sense to use windmills. It would be stupid not to use them.
I think if there's a seat on the tip of the windmill so kids can go for a ride, that would be really cool.
That's a Ferris wheel you're talking about.
So do you know how they used to make the old granaries off the rivers where the turbine, it would turn and it would grind the grain? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
There's a person that picked up one that was abandoned and built their residence off of it. They make so much energy.
Yes, I remember those. That might be like a northeastern thing, or a East Coast thing. Maybe the West Coast didn't have those.
Well, this one's on the West Coast, but I think it was an early 1900s, around the Industrial Revolution kind of thing for sure.
All right, Chris.
Well, I want to also say that I absolutely love the vertical garden feature for smart cities. When I think it was in Madrid several years ago, I walked by a building and it was just green, like the wall was just completely green with a bunch of different herbs. And I asked, and they told me it's their vertical garden. It's beautiful in an urban area. So I look forward to that feature.
A good feature in the building that I worked on was they had a large atrium right in the middle of the building. It was like just basically open, and they had all the kind of plants and greenery right in the center of the building. And that ran all the way from like the 7th floor all the way down to the ground floor. And that'd be quite a useful feature on kind of a large multi-story building to have like a green center.
I would say even the schools, you'd want to make more STEM-related schools and more creative learning schools. So that way, you know, anyone coming up in that kind of community is of a broader mindset and is looking to broaden their horizons to build more cities like this.
Absolutely.
And also, Will, just going back to the prefab homes that you were talking about, it made me wonder, because now, you know, there's a trend of people going to live in tiny houses. So with the prefab homes and in the smart cities, do you guys feel, or anybody in the audience feel that in the future, people would opt for smaller living spaces versus living in big mansions?
No, we should go up, and we should have either the same size kind of homes or maybe even bigger homes, in my personal opinion.
Could this be like Elon Musk's theory about factories, that you want to maximize the efficiency of the volume of the space, and so we would want the city to be, you know, vertically... I kind of torn on that because I don't want somebody living above me or below me, But at the same time, if you want to maximize your efficient use of the space, you do want to have vertical living. How do you balance that?
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me of Tokyo War, in which you probably have a little bit more familiarity. But the Japanese are very much that island has to be extremely like space efficient.
Yeah, and same thing in Taiwan where I came from.
I think we will see definitely more like this kind of people moving to smaller villages, because now the center of the city was always like they have the power, they have the connections, the internet, whatever, and all those kind of things. But because everything gets like, oh my god, now the word is one more time missing, but like autark, how does it say? If you can do it by yourself, you have the energy because you're using the sun, you're using solar. So every smart city can be their own city. So I think we will see a lot of places where people will move to smaller places and not to this kind of big houses and large houses, because now we have the technology and the chance to go out of this kind of big cities and a lot of trouble and stresses, you know?
Well, for sure. Yeah. Urban planning, like if you look at it even like 10, 15 years ago, they were planning on this kind of stuff. So definitely more greenscapes and things being a lot more tighter urban planning for living quarters.
You're right about that. I wanted to thank Emmett for his reminder that, moving everything to, low emissions or no emission kind of no ICE vehicles in our smart city. The reminder that he brought to my mind was when I had my house in Phoenix. It was beautiful. It was great weather in the spring and fall, and you could be outside by the pool. But at every day of the week, there was the sound of lawn equipment in the subdivision because there was so much, yard maintenance, landscaping and things. It's just this, incessant buzzing of two-stroke engines, and it would be really pleasant to do without that in our smart city.
Should ban leaf blowers.
That's the story of my life. That's what I live in now.
The electric leaf blowers are much quieter. There's a bunch of companies that make gear. I happen to buy Greenworks lawn equipment. I think I have 9 or 10 different items, including an 18-inch chainsaw, and all the stuff works great. And one battery to another, and no problem starting anything. It's been heaven, and I'm sure my neighbors appreciate it too. I wanted to encourage everyone to support the people up on stage, excluding myself. K10 is a wonderful writer, as well as a lot of things on Twitter, so that she can be followed there. Warren's got a YouTube channel as well as Twitter, so he can be followed there. Tesla Joy is another example, and I love Will's YouTube channel, A Boring Revolution, not to mention Twitter. So the other great thing is, whether it's us or other people in the audience that like to share or run Clubhouse rooms, it's real easy right now to post it on Clubhouse and provide a link. It's not so easy to discover stuff inside of Clubhouse unless you just happen to be on when the event's happening or people invite you to the room. So that's another benefit of following people on Twitter, is that you'll get the Clubhouse announcements when there's events.
Yeah, and just really...
Thank you for that. Really appreciate that comment. Thank you so much.
And just really quick, for those who don't know, this is the kind of conversation that we're having all the time on Clubhouse. So it really is a great app. If you have iPhone or iOS or iPad or whatever, and you can get on it, it's great. DM me on Twitter if you want an invite. And, check with other people to see if you can get an invite. I think I have 6 left right now, but, I get more when I need them. Other people can get them. So really encourage it. I want to thank Clubhouse for making this possible. Hopefully they won't ban me for doing this.
Thank you, Warren.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for who arranged this.
Yes, thank you, everyone, for the conversation, and thank you, Emmett, for the reference.
Yeah.
It's been a fun chat.
Okay, so I'm gonna end the live stream now, and